Rand Paul is like a dog with a bone. He is still after Anthony Fauci. He has now caught him demanding the destruction of federal property, essentially, which is the deletion of emails. This is what he had just released from him, saying, breaking, newly released emails show Fauci directed colleagues to delete this after you read it, dating back to February of 2020. He denied it under oath. These documents are now public, and Fauci will finally testify before Chairman Rand Paul. So Rand Paul is absolutely going after him. This is the document. This is the letter that he sent out. And he says, Dear Dr. Fauci, the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs is continuing to conduct its investigation into the origins of COVID-19 and risky life sciences research. So then he goes on to say, and while we were investigating, we discovered that you lied. Again, you're a big liar and you lied under oath. He says on June 3rd, when questioned by members of the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, you unequivocally denied under oath ever deleting official records. Congressman Comer asked, quote, Dr. Fauci, did you ever delete an official record? And you responded, no. Similarly, when Congresswoman Lesko asked, were you ever engaged in attempts to obstruct the Freedom of Information Act and the release of public documents? You again responded, no. Additionally, when Congresswoman Malatakis asked, did you delete any emails or records related to the Wuhan lab or origins of the virus? You answered, no, I did not. However, emails obtained by the committee appear to contradict your testimony. For example, in an email dated February 2nd, 2020, you directed then NIH Director Dr. Francis Collins to, quote, please delete this email after you read it. In another email dated July 20th, 2020, to an NIH employee, you stated, I do not want to engage any more with this nonsense, and so please delete this email after you read it. Which they're not supposed to be deleting these emails. They're actually federal property, these emails, because they're government employees. So he says, I have reason to believe that you may be in possession of additional records, so you need to give them up and you need to appear, and you will be, we're going to be questioning you, we're going to be getting you. So all of this, the whole idea, and then the emails, these are the emails. Rand Paul also linked and provided proof of the emails. This is Fauci talking, and saying in these emails, delete them. And he's really just kind of talking smack. He's not saying anything. The problem with these emails is that they're not, hey, let's fund gain of function research, or hey, let's cover up the origins of COVID, or hey, we're the ones who created. We're not getting any of that juicy stuff that we're actually wanting. Instead, these emails are just talking crap about Rand Paul, saying, oh, he's full of shit, and then saying, delete this email after you read it. In fact, let me just get the exact email language. This first one here, this is from Anthony Fauci to Greg Folkers, and he says, and Greg Folkers had sent Anthony Fauci, this is a reply email. Greg Folkers down below in that black box at the bottom, you can see that is a tweet from Rand Paul. And Greg Folkers was sending this tweet screenshot to Anthony Fauci. And the tweet is from Rand Paul. And the tweet says, paging Dr. Fauci, according to JHU, NY's per capita death rate is more than 2 times greater than Italy, Spain, and Britain, and more than 8 times worse than Florida and 10 times worse than Texas. For you to say New York got it done correctly disregards the facts and calls your judgment into question. So Greg Folkers takes a screenshot, sends it to Fauci. Fauci then says in response, as usual, he's full of shit. Mark Meadows curiously had the same response and was upset when I said that New York got things right by finally getting the numbers down and successfully began opening up. I will paste in a note that I sent to Mark. And then in the highlighted yellow is what he sent to Mark Meadows. And he said, I'm sorry, Mark, I do not think you're missing anything. And I understand what you're saying, but I guess we are just looking at this from different perspectives. New York certainly made mistakes, but we learned a lot from the difficult experience that they went through and hopefully benefited cities and states that subsequently got hit. I'm just talking about the fact that they got the numbers down and now they seem to be opening safely and successfully. Also, please forgive me because I am not trying to be contrary, but let's look at the numbers. The level is 0.0016. Miami-Dade County has a population of 2.7 million with 5,000 deaths. The death rate at that population level is 0.0018, and they are not out of it yet. And on the population level, Florida may ultimately turn out not to be too different from New York, which they ended up not being. Fauci was right on that. Really, everybody kind of got hit the same way. It didn't matter what they did. And that was kind of the point of those of us who were against the lockdowns and all the crazy stuff. It was like, what's the point of all this? It's not going to do anything. And it didn't, right? Just like, go take the vaccine 5 times and what? You're not going to get COVID? So he says, and then he says to Greg, so he posts that and then continues on to Greg and he says, I do not want to engage anymore with this nonsense. And so please delete this email after you read it. Thanks. So it's not juicy. That's the problem with it, right? This isn't where it's not like he's saying, okay, go put COVID in the bats and make it more virulent and, and then unleash it on the American population. I mean, we're not getting any of the stuff that we want to get. This is just him calling Rand Paul and Mark Meadows idiots, basically, and then saying, now delete this after you read it. And the other email that Fauci says, delete this after you read it, he says, this is from Fauci to Francis Collins, and Francis had written him, or he actually pasted a forward from Jeremy Farrar, and what are they talking about on this? They're actually just saying, this is actually when they were trying to figure out so that the proximity, that whole paper was coming out where they were saying, the proximal origins paper, where they were saying, you know what, maybe this doesn't look natural. And then Fauci went and covered that up. So this one is a little bit more about the cover up. But basically, in this email, the people that wrote, let me kind of blow this up a little bit so I can really see it for you guys. But from Jeremy Ferrari says, Mike and Bernhard, thank you for phoning. Very helpful. Copying in Francis and Tony, as well as Tedros. Fully agree with your summary. Best is if this is addressed under the umbrella of WHO, has to be framed as to understand the source and evolution of SARS-CoV-2. With that, so basically he's saying this email thread is them saying, how are we going to combat this paper and basically delegitimize it? What are we going to say? And they're saying, okay, let's frame this around the WHO. It's critical that responsible, respected scientists and agencies get ahead of the science and the narrative of this and are not reacting to reports which could be very damaging. I'm sure I speak for Francis and Tony when I say we are here and ready to play any constructive role in this. Do think this is an urgent matter to address, saying, there's an urgency and importance of this issue amidst a very troubling epidemic. And, they're saying that this has to be framed as to understand the source and evolution of SARS. Within that, a number of issues to be addressed, including environmental and animal sampling, human viral genome sequencing and analysis, and more. So kind of giving working orders of how are we going to combat this? And then this is responded to where Francis says, in response to Jeremy Farrar, Francis Collins says, sounds mostly encouraging, though I don't understand the choice of working through Mike and Bernard and not just going straight to Tedros. But that's fine as long as these next steps are initiated very quickly. So they're trying to say we got to get ahead of this narrative and we got to put out our own narrative is what they're basically saying. And Anthony Fauci then responds to that and says, I agree with you. Mike and Bernhard are good people, but they really slow things down, particularly Mike Ryan, whose main concern is not offending anyone. Please delete this email after you read it. So I think Fauci, when he says, please delete this email after you read it, is mostly because this is a thread of other emails that are in existence. He's not saying go in and delete all those other emails. He's just saying delete this email. I think when he insults someone, so he insulted Rand Paul and was like, he's full of shit, delete this email. And then he says, oh, Mike, all he wants to do is not offend people, so delete this email. I think when he offends people, he wants to delete the evidence that he's made these kind of disparaging remarks about them. That is not what we want, though, right? I mean, okay, great, Rand. I'm glad you're going to go after him for that. I'm sure, what you're going to get Fauci for lying under oath. And, it's going to be another one of those, it's just an obstruction of justice, lying under oath. And that's the only thing that, that's what they get everybody for. When they can't actually get actual evidence against them, they get them for these smaller things. This isn't what we want. That's the problem. This isn't what we want. We don't want Fauci to go to jail for obstruction of justice and lying under oath over, wanting to delete emails, insulting people. That's not what we're looking for. We want the real stuff, right? We want the real stuff. We want the stuff that ruined our lives. That's what we want to nail Fauci for. But instead But you know what? Look, I'm glad that Rand Paul is still doing this. Like I said, he's like a dog with a bone. It's great, but this is not what we want. We want the real stuff. We want the stuff that ruined our lives. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.